Nice to meet you.
Meet you.
Who do you have
This,
with you?
this is my dog Madonna. She's very,
Madonna.
yes. She fits
Excellent.
very well.
She what?
Fits her name very well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've never heard um I mean it should be the name of more animals, Madonna. I mean it's a
It's
pop
the
icon. Yeah.
if
Uh,
I ever get if I ever get another dog, I have been swearing I'm gonna name it Cher.
There you
So then
go.
Madonna and Cher. I think
Uh,
that's pretty iconic.
oh yeah. You can have a whole lineup of divas. So yeah, that's perfect. Absolutely perfect. So it's nice
Oh
to
no,
meet you. Oh, sorry. We had a little delay. Sorry. It's great to meet you. Thanks for taking a minute out. Where you're coming out of?
Los Angeles.
Oh, cool. All right. La La Land. Yeah. I went to San Diego this last summer.
Oh,
So
I love San Diego. Did you
yeah.
get a chance to go to the zoo by chance?
I didn't. We breezed through. We were at Imperial Beach. There was a friend of a family member that's in the Navy. So
So
um,
cool.
yeah. So we just
If
took it
you ever
in.
go down there again, you should totally check out the zoo. It is like, I'm not the biggest fan of zoos just because, like, typically not the best for the animals, but
Yeah.
that zoo is actually all about like restoration and helping the animals get back into the wild.
Yeah.
And so, really cool zoo to check out. It's huge too.
100%. Is that where Jack Hanna's based?
Honestly, I'm not sure.
Huh. There's someone that's really big that's based there, and I could swear it, although maybe he's in Omaha. Anyway, okay. Yeah, I've heard so many good things about the San Diego Zoo, so I have to get there next time for sure. So, so before we get into your life, I want to know, how did you survive COVID and how did it change the way that you do things now?
So, such a great question. I actually graduated during COVID. So I graduated in 2020, right when the pandemic hit and lockdown began. And pre-COVID and all throughout high school and college, I had plans to be a wedding planner.
Yeah.
So when lockdown hit, I lost my wedding planning job, I lost my restaurant job, and then I graduated within like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I ended up moving in with family and saving up some money, getting some random jobs. I ended up working at Costco a little bit and just really saved up some money and started doing online certifications and just seeing what else is out there beyond wedding planning. Because for the first few months, I was waiting, hoping lockdown would end. And then I decided I don't want to put my life on hold anymore. I have no
Yeah.
idea when lockdown will end. I want to start living my life and doing things.
Yeah.
And that's when I just started freelancing out social media services just to see what's out there. And through one of my clients, I really fell in love with helping him get organized and boost his productivity, which made me realize how much I love productivity in general.
Yeah.
And so I really dove into that whole sphere and decided that I always want to be working for myself. I really fell in love with freelancing and being an independent contractor. And that is just, I really just ended up being obsessed with productivity. And then my client said, you should really make a business out of this.
Mhm.
You've helped me so much. Like, you should start something. And then that's when I decided to become a productivity life coach and really mesh personal and professional development together. Because I think that is how I got through COVID, was
Yeah.
by putting my personal development first. And I'm a huge advocate of therapy. I've been going to therapy ever since I was 8. So stuff through therapy throughout COVID. And I think that really, really helped me realize I needed to switch my professional career to move forward in my personal life. And so I think just meshing the two and then bringing a business out of it
Yeah.
really good.
I've noticed with the younger generations that there's a more emboldened attitude to create your own business, to create your own reality versus company life. It's actually quite refreshing because, I come from Generation X, and um, there was this thing where we wanted to travel and didn't want to get tied to a corporate job, but a lot of us did. So I think with a lot of the successive generations, there's been this idea of, let's just create our own reality. Let's not have somebody else dictate our reality or our schedules and all that.
Absolutely. And I think COVID was really the shift that allowed that to happen.
Yeah.
I really think if COVID hadn't happened and if the world wasn't forced to figure out work from home and to figure out different digital means of doing things, then my generation probably wouldn't have felt the need to be on their own as much. So I really do think COVID paved the way for people like me to actually see, because before COVID, I never thought about running a business. I never thought about being an entrepreneur or having my own thing. I always just planned on being a wedding planner for someone else. But COVID actually let me realize that I can do this on my own. This is something that I don't need a corporate world for.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome.
definitely an interesting twist on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, well, and that was what I was gonna get to, was that COVID really did push people into reanalyzing their realities and what they want, and knowing that there's a level of us that there's things we're in control of and there's other things we aren't. So if you do run your own business, you're in control of it. I mean, even if the world did shut down, there's ways of getting around it. So that's yeah, that's interesting. So let's get to the actual essence of what you do on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders, career day. One of the kids looks up at you and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
My 8-year-old sibling asked me this last week.
Ooh, there you go.
Oh,
Grooming you.
so I literally know exactly. So I help people overcome certain mental blocks in their mind so that way they can reach their full potential professionally.
Okay. Perfect.
Some of it.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So when you were 8 years old or in that range, what was your dream? What'd you want to be when you grew up?
I always wanted to be a mom. That was always something I said from a big as a job, which I thought was so fun because I had a stay-at-home mom. So I
Yeah.
think that very much rubbed off on me. And then it turned around into a bunch of different things. I can remember saying I wanted to be a wedding planner, which is kind of funny how that ended up happening.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be a lawyer at one point. I wanted to be a politician at one point. I wanted to be an author, which I still do at one point. So a whole range of things. I feel like I was always all over the place.
Sure. So are all those things that you eventually want to do to a certain degree? I mean, except for the things that are lengthy school, but I mean, they're on the radar.
Even let's say like I think a lot of what I do is studying and research. Like I am constantly trying to learn. I'm taking new courses, I'm reading, I'm on seminars and webinars all the time. So I really do try to have a student mentality with wherever I go. And I think that kind of stems from having a professor as a father and being very school oriented most of my life.
Yeah.
And then I think that's also where being a lawyer wanted to play it into when I was a kid. But everything that I've always wanted to do always had something to do with helping people
Yeah.
fulfill a dream of theirs, no matter what that dream was, whether it was their wedding or whether it was a lawsuit, like whatever the dream was, I always wanted to help people fulfill it. And then when I was 8 years old, actually, my parents got divorced and it was a really, really messy divorce. And it still is messy, stayed messy all throughout my life. So I think the best thing they ever did for me was put me in therapy and have that constantness because going back and forth between family and then always having therapy every single week really instilled understanding of mental health in me very young that majority of people do not get. And I
Right.
feel blessed for that because having so much awareness has definitely influenced many of my decisions throughout my life, and particularly now in my business. I really do try to incorporate mental health in everything I do. And growing up, I didn't realize how that was being instilled in me and how much of my identity it was until really recent years. So
And
definitely
you
bits of what I've been talking about my whole life into what I'm doing now for
sh-
sure.
sure, yeah, and I think, going through COVID, that really did bring the spotlight on mental health in a way where it's not seen as this like weird thing where people think you got to get over it or whatever. There's
Some people have it and other
right.
people are totally fine. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Really shed a light on a stigma because I think people who would always say that they never had to experience mental health were actually experiencing it.
Of course.
And it was like a light bulb for them, like, oh, maybe there is something here.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go into your childhood. Tell me where you were born and raised and what the seeds of you wanting to help people. How did all of that become who you are today?
So I was born and raised in Los Angeles, one of the very few who actually lived right next to the airport, LAX. So then my parents got divorced when I was around 8, and both parents actually stayed in LA. So I was very lucky to have most of my family in LA until I went to college. And then I went to LMU, so I stayed in LA for college too. So love LA, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think there are two really moments for me that I genuinely remember as very like crucial shifts in my life. And one of them was when a neighbor of mine who I really looked up to, she was a working mom, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. So it was kind of like a different view of what a mom could be. And she was sharing with me, almost bragging about being up for 72 hours and how she had so much to do and how her life needed to be so much more productive, and like just it was so twisted, such a twisted view of what being busy and being productive means. And I felt that then, and I was probably like 6, 7, 8. And I remember thinking to myself, I am never going to be like that. I am never going to let my work rule my life. Like, I love sleep. I don't ever want to be up for 72 hours, like
Yeah.
doing work. And she has 3 kids. And so it was just like, obviously familial issues happened because she was exhausted, and it just leads into so many different things. So having that moment, I really think made me not ever want to be in the corporate world, made me want to be more creative, and kind of led me to being a coach.
Yeah.
And another moment was when my parents did get divorced, and my mom was really suffering with her mental health. They were married for 35 years, and it was a very abrupt divorce, and it was really challenging for her. And even though she sent me to therapy, she wasn't going to therapy. And so I very much felt like her therapist. And I felt like I walked her through, and I would literally
Oh,
ask my therapist what to say to her and how do like coach me so I can coach her type of
yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
And she's even admitted, looking back, like if it wasn't for me, she doesn't know she would have gotten through it. And just that whole experience really melded into my mind the importance of mental health within everything, because it affected her life, her personal life, her familial life, her professional life, her every arena of her life. And so I think those two experiences happening so back to back with each other is really how I ended up here throughout the years.
So, who's been kind of a hero for you in your life?
Oh, I have so many. So one big hero of mine is my grandma. She actually passed away from Alzheimer's, but she was my absolute best friend. Um, Mainly because of her kindness, no matter what the situation was, she was always there for me with a hug and an open heart. And having that security allowed me to do so many things. And it's something that I really try to pass on to other people. So definitely my grandma. And then one who I haven't met before is Marie Forleo. I think she is one of the coolest coaches out there, and has a very similar background to me in the sense that she got started really young like me and had to build up that credibility and was learning on the job and all that kind of fun stuff. And now she has an insane community, an insane following, but also just is so her and has stuck to who she is. So I really love her and honestly kind of want to be her. So definitely is a hero of mine.
So, if you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now, who would it be? Who would you love to spend some time with?
Honestly, Marie.
I figured. I just wanted to
Yeah,
make sure.
yeah, definitely Marie. I think for so many reasons, just I would love to be her friend. Like that
Yeah.
would be number one. I'm like, let's be friends.
Yeah.
We feel we're on the same vibe for sure. But then just to learn from her, of course.
Yeah. So, what is it every day that gets you up and motivated, gas in your tank, so to speak, to do what you do?
So I have this vision for my future in where I am have this huge company, and I help people essentially like rescript and retrain their minds. And then I am developing this whole system and culture for my kids to then learn and grow into as well. And then hopefully they will not have to suffer with a lot of the things that we suffer with now, because they'll be learning how to train their mind and learning how to be productive and all these things very young. And then I would love to eventually start teaching all kinds of kids and all over how to like instill this really young, so that way you don't grow up with these kind of troubles. So
Yeah,
I think in the long term, that's really what I think about every morning, how like I am doing this for like the future kids to be able to not have to re-script, but just script and just be, yeah, just from the beginning.
sure. So what's been your best success story so far?
Honestly, I think just coming out of COVID and even starting my business and just having this switch, because I very much felt like within 3 to 4 weeks, my entire life was kind of at halt and taken from me. I hate to say taken from me because it sounds like I had no control, but in that moment, it felt like I had no control in the sense that I was losing jobs. There's everything felt out of my control. And then being able to come back stronger and with more control, but then also with a purpose. A lot of people can't do that. And a lot of people would, keep falling down and then just wait until lockdown lifted and then go back to the way things were before.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of myself for being able to take a step back and reshifting and analyzing exactly what I wanted and being able to make it happen.
So it's very rare that I run into somebody that's born and bred in LA. LA tends to be kind of a transplant city, and I'm from
Totally.
Kansas City and I've been here my whole life. And when people, talk about Kansas City and why they like it, it's always interesting. So from your perspective, why do you love LA?
Number one, diversity. I can get anything I want. It's very crazy. I can get every type of food I want. I can get pretty much any type of experience I want, whether that be an actual, like, let's say, movie experience, concert experience, or whether I want to go to the beach, mountains, desert. It's all within my reach. Number two would be the people. And by the people, I don't mean the transplants. I mean
Right.
those of us who have been born and raised here, because it's not many of us. However, those of us who are, I would say, are the opposite of Hollywood. I'm
Mhm.
absolutely like Hollywood and hate all that thing. And we're very like down to earth and more like just want to experience LA. And we always try to get out in the hole in the walls. There's always something to do and see, someone to meet. And I think another reason why I've always loved it is because of the community aspects. There's a lot of obviously different neighborhoods, but when you do go into each neighborhood, it's a community
Yeah.
and everyone knows each other. And it might be just be a couple streets, but they are best friends. And so I really love that because that's how it was where I grew up in Westchester, just a small neighborhood, but we could ride our bikes and go around like doors
Mhm.
unlocked at night type of deal. And it was very small town-esque.
Yeah. So as someone that wants to be an author and a writer, what was the book that you read early on in your life? The first book that made you really want to read more or write?
Yes. So I have always actually been really into poetry,
Hmm.
especially when I was younger. I don't really know what got me started on poetry. I actually think I just started writing it randomly, as a way for me to express everything that was happening in my childhood, from like my parents' divorce to my grandma getting Alzheimer's and just all kinds of traumatic events. I really put it into writing. And then as I've grown up, I've become really obsessed with self-help books. And I think I've read pretty much all the big ones that you could think of. And every single one has a foundation in mental health. They just don't call it mental health, they call it whatever they want to call it.
Yeah,
And I think that is really driving me to kind of put all of this together and like label it as mental health and have finally a self-help book that really talks about mental health and productivity rather than just like tiptoeing around it.
absolutely. So let me ask you this. If you could go back in human history and see an event firsthand, what would you love to see happen?
That's a great one. Women get the right to vote.
Cool. Yeah.
It's so important. And it was massive, but it was also s- it still left out a lot of groups. It was really more like white women get the right to vote. And I think I would love to go back and see how that played out and see the differences in the way the struggle is today.
So, Emily, everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you're the one in control. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I am someone who has a lot to offer because of how many experiences I have gone through. I know I'm young, but I know I definitely know what I want in life. And I know that I have the strength and determination to get it and the will to keep going when things get tough. So
Right on.
even when I feel those self-limiting beliefs, I genuinely write affirmations like that down every single morning. So that way I never forget it.
And you always have Madonna there to lift your spirits,
Always
right?
have Madonna.
So, if anyone wants to hire you, learn more about you, anything pertaining to your world, where is the best place to go?
TheProductivityFlow.com. I have all of my coaching up there. And then I also have my e-course about how to get unstuck and move forward up there. And then I also have a ton of blogs and free products and digital downloads that you can get to implement a lot of the productivity and mental health aspects that I'm talking about.
Cool. Emily, this is great. Thank you for opening up. Thanks for your story. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much. I super, super appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great